Jona Podkivánok, and thank you for the word, for letting me talk at this conference. As was slightly indicated by the program, my name is Peter Kosinar, and I'm going to be talking to you about how things were different between the traditional crime and what happened in the modern world, how things have changed or how they have learned. What you see is a standard picture of a criminal or a ninja. Ninjas are the good ones. I have seen them outside on one of the posters. This is the bad one because he has a knife. And in the modern world, the situation has changed a little bit. The modern tools look slightly different. So, brief introduction to myself. What do I do? Well, I work for an antivirus vendor, as you can see from the logo on the left-hand side. I do meet quite a lot of malware on a daily basis. I do some teaching of computer security to students or other interested audience. And I certainly do like to look at what the bad guys are doing in their digital world and how they are trying to get money, get other intangible things out of the poor victims. What I certainly don't like is wearing a suit, as you can see. Now, I did start looking into computer security quite some time ago, and some 15 years ago, roughly, it was pretty difficult to actually make profit out of being a bad guy in the area of computer security. I wasn't one, but I have been seeing what they are doing. In these days, the situation has changed quite a bit. With the advent of internet and the broadband connections at every home and almost everywhere, with the advent of online payment systems and so on, all of this actually makes people fall victims to new kinds of crime they have not encountered before. They were used to someone stealing the stuff from you, not to someone copying stuff from you when you don't see the loss of property. Generally, the humankind has not evolved as fast as the technology has. There are many things that have changed, there are many things that have improved, and we have not kept up with that. We have not understood many of the risks associated with computer security and the related topics. The alternative markets like, let's say, the Bitcoin, let's say currency, or some others do provide very nice opportunity to work with something that is purely digital, that has no counterpart in the real world, and therefore make profit in a way which was not even imaginable before the advent of these. The bad thing is the criminals don't need to play by the rules, unlike us, the good guys. We do, or at least we try to. One of the standard techniques that the bad guys in the past have used was intimidation, to scare you, to do something that you wouldn't have done otherwise. Scaring is very simple. Give me your money because otherwise I shoot you. Well, simple approach. Or otherwise I will do something else that you wouldn't certainly like. These days it is much simpler. They tell you, give us money or someone else will do harm to you. And it is, moreover, in the digital world. The very common thing we have seen was something that was pretending to be coming from the official police force, in the particular country where the victim was located. It looked roughly like this for Slovakia. The guy up there is our president, there is our flag, it says this is our former president actually, this is the part which is the forensics team, and it was showing very important information for you, such as your IP address, which should have convinced you that if someone knows your IP address, surely they must know you, they know what you have done, they know what you have been doing, what are your plans, what kind of crimes have you committed. The truth is, this is only true for people who don't understand what the IP address is. Those who have some idea do understand it is nothing important. It is basically something that you broadcast every time you connect to any website, including the website hosting this malicious content. It was showing you other things, such as your provider. Well, it is very easy to determine, using the IP address to determine the provider. Sometimes it is easy to actually guess the country you are in. Sometimes they failed miserably. Like at one point they were telling us that we are located at the Department of Defense of US. Well, certainly we were not. We were located in Slovakia. But the Department of Defense used to have a range of IP addresses which were then liberated and were distributed to other interested parties. And as a result, they have not updated their map. They were still mapping it to the old location. And therefore, as a result, you would be seeing warning from the FBI or someone who you don't even care about. The other thing is your username and your operating system, again, information which is quite simply obtained by anything running on your computer. Yet, and of course this was showing some interesting messages like, yeah, you have been committing crimes, you have been distributing child pornography, or breaching the intellectual property, or doing any of the many other things. This would not be enough to convince anybody who has some technical knowledge of things to do anything like, apart from ignoring it or trying to figure out how to remove it from the system. The problem is many people who don't have understanding of technology did fall for this. The idea was very simple. If you pay within a given time limit, which was, in this case, it was 2 days. In some cases, they were generous and gave you even 3 days. The idea was you pay and you won't face the jail time. There were very detailed accounts of how much jail time you would be facing if you don't pay. After the 2 days, the nice thing was, in some cases, the malware actually disappeared because it gave up. Well, you haven't paid until now, you probably aren't going to pay at all. In other cases, it remained and started to try to convince you some more, like, yes, you really should pay, otherwise you will be facing trouble. What we have learned from our discussion with the actual police officers, there are people paying. There were people who paid the fee, the, let's say, ransom. They were paying, and they were actually asking, calling the police, so when are you going to unlock my computer? Well, we have no idea when, because we didn't log it in the first place. So what am I supposed to do? Well, the best thing you can do is probably to file a complaint or charge that, yes, someone did actually run away with my money because I have just provided them. The money is quite nice. It was nothing like breaking, something that you wouldn't want to pay. It was, the sum was low enough that you could afford it, and actually it might be easier to pay it and avoid all the trouble. In many cases, the malware was actually nice, and it really left your machine after it found that, oops, actually you have paid. Well, okay, maybe next time, maybe we will pay some more next time. It was nothing that would be too bad. Sometimes even the cost of taking the computer to some expert who would remove the malware would be higher than the thing you were supposed to be paying. Well, in that case, it is purely a rational decision to pay and get the machine working, or not to pay and see what happens. We do have also a Hungarian version of it. It was showing something similar. It was, in this case, it was mapping it correctly to Budapest, and it was talking about section 128 of the criminal code, which, if you don't happen to know, is this one. I don't think there is much of a chance for you to be breaching this kind of thing, since it is related to soldiers during wartime. It is not really something that you would be doing during the time of peace. In Slovak, it was quite similar. The number was 161, and it was talking about cloning of people, of humans. I don't think either of the people who were victims did actually do this at home. The important part is that people were still scared enough, because it was talking about years they could spend in prison and other potential charges they might be facing, or other potential fees they might be needing to pay. The scare factor was sufficient to make them pay, and well, the criminal is happy. He doesn't need everybody to pay. He just needs enough. The cost of producing something like this is basically the cost of drawing a nice picture and combining a few freely available pictures which look very official, like the logo of the country, the logo of the police force, possibly something else that does sound or looks scary, and then put it all together. That's about it, really, nothing more. It is simple, and it is done in once, and the victims are many. What you can do is actually to customize it to different countries. That's why we have been seeing a piece of malware we were seeing as FBI ransomware, because the first reports of the same thing we got were from US. But the same thing actually turns out to be the Slovak police ransomware, the Czech police ransomware, the Hungarian police ransomware. It was the same thing underneath. What was differing were the visualizations. The malware was the same, and the bunch of crooks who were behind it were one and the same group. As it turns out, there are not that many groups doing this. There are a few of them, but they do change the visualizations. They improve. They are trying to make you more and more scared and more willing to pay. This was a long time ago, and yet the same thing is still happening. People are still paying the ransom, even after they were told in the TV, in the media. It was repeated over and over that no, there is no point in doing this. What you are facing is not really something that you should be scared of. Yet people are still falling for it, even if it is repeated and repeated. The other possible thing that the standard crooks could do, apart from shooting each other, but that's not interesting in the digital world, They could try to take something that you find precious, like your dog or cat, in some cases mother-in-law, and then demand that you pay. In the digital world, you don't happen to have a digital dog or digital cat unless you count a Tamagotchi in. In this case, what you possess, and people don't often realize that it is something important, it is your documents. The documents, pictures, spreadsheets, pictures that you took last year at the holidays. It's something that you cannot take again. If you lose them, you don't have them. There is no way to recreate them. Documents, you have a contract with someone. You can't really recreate it in the original form unless you have a backup. That is something obvious, simple. Yet, the idea is steal your data and prevent you from getting access to it unless you pay. This is something that is worse than what we have been seeing with just locking your computer that can be undone. This is something that we have seen a long time ago, very long time ago. This was a piece of malware which was having fun with you, because at that time there was no reasonable way to produce money. In this case, you started computer, and what you could see was, oh, welcome to Las Vegas. We are going to play the game where you pull the lever, and there are 3 spinning discs, and you see if you get 3 equal symbols, you have won, and you get your data back. In this case, actually, the game was lying. It was not true that the data was loaded into the operating memory, and then, therefore, if you switch the computer off, you would lose it. As it turns out, it was not. If you switch the computer off at this very moment, you would be safe. Of course, the improved versions have improved, and they did really load the data in operating memory and erase it on the disk. Therefore, if you switch the computer off at that very moment, you would really lose some of the data. The good thing was the computer memory was small enough, so the amount of data you would lose was not that big. In this case, you could actually win the author's phone number. I am not sure whether it was actually valid or not, but nobody probably cares about it because it was probably fake. These days, this was a long time ago, we are talking 20 years plus. These days, you want to make money of it. How do you make money of it? Well, you encrypt the data and prevent someone from accessing it, but tell them, okay, this is no game of chance. If you pay, you might get the data back. There is a promise. If you pay, you get the data back. If you don't pay or contact the police, you might never see the data again, just like with your dog or cat. The bad thing is, if someone takes away your cat and someone sees, oh, he has the cat, they can actually report them and so on. With digital world, if the cryptography is done right, which is difficult to do, but it is possible, the result is that yes, your data will be protected from everybody, including you, and excluding the bad guy who encrypted it with information only he possesses. As a result, what you get is to have your data in a form which is completely unusable to you unless you pay. Even if you combine all the computing power that we have actually created up to now, it would not be enough to crack just one of the keys if it is done properly, and we have seen implementations which have done it properly. One of the things which was making the headlines, I think it was last year, it was called CryptoLocker, and everybody was scared. It was the worst computer virus of all time, which seems to be interestingly happening like every year. There is some worst computer virus appearing again and again. And well, in this case, it was the worst compared to itself, probably. What it was doing was pay us because we have encrypted your data with key only we possess, and it was unfortunately pretty much true. Unless someone managed to get hold and control of the server the attacker was operating, which actually happened in the past and not that long ago, the data was inaccessible and uncrackable by current known technologies. Of course, it is possible that someone might have a super magic algorithm or quantum computer in their basement which could crack these kind of encryptions. The bad thing is we are not aware of anybody having these capabilities. What is worse, the attackers are not doing the thing that they would be actually creating their own software all the time. Sometimes they use clean, known, well-known utilities for encrypting. Like there is the GNU-PG, the GNU Privacy Guard, which is an open source version of the PGP or based on PGP. Encryption which is proven through time that it is working well, and they basically run it against you. They provide their own encryption key, which you don't have, and encrypt your data with it using clean software. Then they erase the data from your computer using clean software used for erasing data. There are utilities for making sure that you don't leave any traces on the computer, such as if you are trying to get rid of an old hard drive, you don't want to leave any private files on it, as it happens often. So there are clean known utilities for erasing the data. Combining clean encryption with clean erasing ends up with you are out of luck. You don't have chance of restoring the data unless you had some kind of a backup. One of the simple methods of backing stuff up is to back up them to, for example, some network storage, like someone tends to have the box with 4 terabyte disks and then just copies the stuff to there. No worries, if you have a device from, or if you had a device from Synology, there would be a product available just for you, the Synolocker. That one was happily attacking the Synology disk storage, the network storage devices. It was encrypting the stuff on them, not in the computer. That is uninteresting. It was using software vulnerability and attacking your storage, which if you had been using it as a backup, well, you now had a very, very safe backup. A backup which even you couldn't get into. But if anybody was trying to ask you to provide the data from it, you could do it very happily, knowing that they wouldn't be able to access it either. Of course, mobiles are no exception. People tend to store photos, videos, or other interesting stuff in them. Perfect opportunity for encryption. If you take a known application like Angry Birds, a very well-known one, or take the one which is paid like for a horrible sum of, let's say, 80 euro cents, and then you take it, add the extra layer which performs the encryption, and then give it out for free, guess how many people will be trying to save the 80 euro cents? Way too many of them. Searching for a free version of something just on the principle that they are not paying for it, or they are incapable of paying for it. There might be good reasons. Children tend to do that. If they are not allowed to be using the payment services on the tablet or mobile phone, they tend to look for the stuff elsewhere, and they are very successful in finding it. And infecting your work device, which if it was running with the full privileges, which it usually is, not many people do have multiple users on their mobile phone, ends up with your device being encrypted and the data being essentially lost. Unless, of course, you have backup. Everybody knows backup is the perfect magic thing. Like if you have 5 disks and you put them in a RAID, you can be sure that even if one of the disks fails, you can still get your data. Even if 2 of them fail, you can still get your data. But the bad thing is RAID is no backup. RAID is not a technology which is meant to prevent intentional modification of the data. It's a technology which is often misunderstood. It is often misunderstood by the IT managers and companies, seeing it as, yes, we have the redundancy, we are not going to lose any data, which is very true. In this case, they are not losing the data. They are getting improved version of the data, the safe encrypted one. If you have 5 disks, the RAID will very happily store the same useless encrypted content over all 5 of them. If you then 2 of the disks break, you will still be left with the full encrypted useless content. The other possibility where to put the backups is to put them in the cloud. Magic buzzword of these days, cloud does this, cloud does that, iCloud here, iCloud there, here cloud, there cloud, everywhere cloud, cloud. And then you really, really hope you are not putting pictures that you have taken at inappropriate times, as many of the celebrities have learned in a very bad way recently. Data was accessible to more than they wanted. So the encryption can actually be useful, apart from being your enemy when someone encrypts your data without your knowledge. You can actually encrypt it yourself before storing somewhere, which is a very good idea. And now you have slightly smaller problem, but still a problem. Make sure you do keep the keys to decrypting the data if you ever need it. Another thing which is very often underestimated by many companies, but individuals for sure, is if you make backups, just try to check whether you are able to restore them at least once. It is very often not part of the plan. The backups are made, everything is working, no error messages in any logs. That can be a very good indication of nothing happening, or the backups actually being useless because they are half a year old. And this is a scenario where no other solution apart from backup is going to help you. Yes, computers can sometimes catch fire or can be stolen in a physical way. Someone gets into your apartment and takes the computer away. No antivirus software is going to help you. No local backup solution is going to help you. If they clear your full apartment, no network area storage is going to help you. Having the backup elsewhere might save you. Generally, we have seen that people are falling. How do they get infected? We have seen them falling for many simple tricks, very simple ones. People are getting tickets with, for tomorrow. People are getting, Česká pošta being the Czech post office, are getting some packages sent from the Czech post office. They are getting messages on the phone that they are happily reading. And as you can probably guess, I wouldn't be writing the examples and showing them to you if they were all right, all of them. There is something wrong with each one of them. First of all, the first line has a nice extension after lots and lots of spaces. SCR is a nice name for screensaver, which is something that you wouldn't expect of your tickets for the next concert. And it is separated from the actual thing you notice by lots of spaces. I didn't put as many spaces as I wanted because then it would be somewhere over there and you wouldn't see it. And that's the main point, so that you wouldn't see it. If you don't notice it, you will see, oh, this is perfect, there are my tickets. There might be some clean thing, I will open them. In this case, you will execute them because SCRs are executables. The other part which I was showing, there was a nice PDF icon. This is what you would see if you looked at this attachment in Windows. You would see zásilka.pdf, zásilka means package. The example is actually taken from something that piece of malicious code we have discovered last year, which was named Hesperbot. It was using this method for spreading. You got zásilka.pdf. It has the PDF icon, therefore it must be okay. It is a document after all. It is not. Windows was very nice, and they tried to simplify things for the users, so they are not showing the known extensions. Therefore, if it was a PDF, it wouldn't be named .pdf. But since some programs do show the actual extension, some of them do not, users got very much like, well, whatever. It is showing the PDF, it is probably okay. After all, it has the PDF icon. The PDF icon is something very nice because it can be used by anybody, just like any other picture. Any program can specify its own icon, just like Chrome has its colorful icon, just like Explorer has its E letter. Any of the programs can specify their own icon, including but not limited to one which claims I am a PDF. The real extension is, of course, executable, and you get infected. The other quite popular trick is you are using letters which look similar. I didn't intentionally use too many of them. I did use A with the 2 dots over it, which is not obviously similar. But then there are some others, like the really word actually contains 2 number ones. And some of the O's in photo are actually zeros. They look the same, but they are not. Just like Google is spelled with 2 O's, but it can be replaced by zeros or some other characters which look very much like a small circle, which makes user think, oh yeah, this is Google thing, this is Google search, this is Google photo, this is Google whatever. It's not. It doesn't need to be. It looks like Google. It visually looks the way you would expect it, but it doesn't need to be. Oh, and yeah, people tend to be clicking on everything and anything. This kind of SMS was obtained by, or was used by one piece of malware, which was originally spreading in Russia and Ukraine. It has managed to jump into Slovakia for a very simple reason. Someone got the contact number because it was sent using SMSs. Someone got the contact number of someone in Slovakia who got the message. In this case, the message was in Russian, which would be quite surprising to many people in our country. Like, why would you be writing to me in Russian? Unfortunately, there were people who were actually expecting it to be Russian because it was already a Russian friend or so. So they opened the thing, which ended up with it spreading further. Weirdly enough, there were many people clicking on the link without even reading the message and noticing that the message, this is not the real one, the message was actually in Cyrillics. When we asked them, so did you click on any link? Yeah, there was some link. And was there any message? Yeah. Okay, so did you notice that it was in Cyrillics? What? Okay, after you click on the link, you download an application. The fact that there is a photo.jpg written in the link does not imply that what you are downloading is going to be a JPEG. But you get an application for Android. Click on it, you open it, and what you see is, I am an application I want to install, I want this long list of permissions. Yes or no? left, right, random, click. You ask them, what were you doing? Oh, actually, just the screen went black and then I pressed something. Okay, this is a very good description to try to figure out, is this something that is really problematic? Is it exploiting some unknown vulnerability which allows it to install without user's interaction? Or is it something that the user actually installed? The worst thing is there are built-in mechanisms in, for example, Android, which prevent you from installing applications from unknown sources. So what do you do if it tells you that it cannot be installed because of this? Click, uncheck the box, and then click on the link again. We have seen this not just with this, we have seen it with many other things. We have seen it with malicious banking Trojans. There was a person who actually had very poor mobile data connection and was trying to get the thing. They didn't manage to download it, clicked again, and they're repeating this 5 times. Then actually had to disable the unknown applications checkbox, and then download it again and install it. So this was, the person was almost protected by their poor internet connection, but no, they were persistent enough. In general, mobile devices are problematic because they have smaller screens, therefore even less information is shown there. You know, this page is very safe, there are many locks in there. Well, this is what we have taught people. If you see a lock, it is safe, it is secure, it says HTTPS, it is therefore okay. What is the lock? Is it in the left upper corner, lower right corner, in the middle of the page? The user doesn't really care. In fact, we have trained them to ignore all of the security warnings because there were too many of them. If there are too many warnings, people start ignoring them and just clicking through. And with the mobile, it is even easier because the screen is smaller, therefore you see even less information. As a result, even those who want to make the informed decision can often not do so. As it is often said, if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. This is what we are seeing with many of the devices. It can be computers, it can be mobiles, it can be your home routers, it can be the DVRs, it can be smart TVs. Many of these devices are now connected to the internet, and the security of many of them is very poor. As a result, they are often compromised and used for bad purposes. In some cases, it is just participating in some botnet and performing denial of service attacks. It's just, even so you might complain that if you have by chance some internet connection which has limited amount of data transferred, you might be very surprised by your bill at the end of the month. It can be used for spamming, so that then you will be getting complaints like, why are you sending out spam from your address when, well, there is nothing running on my computer. It might be perfectly true because it's other device in your network which is compromised. In many cases, if someone gets access to one of your accounts, most of the users have one master account. Someone prefers Gmail, someone prefers some other one, but that is the main one. And when they register to some other services, they put this email address as the one that should be used for contacts. And this email address is very often very useful for gaining access to any other services using the simple thing, reset my password. Please send me the password reminder or password reset information to my email address. As soon as you have control over the main one, you have control over all the other accounts. And those can be used for data mining, for getting information on other possible victims, or it can be used for performing something more direct, such as sending out spam from well-established, long-known, clean address. In general, any kind of multi-factor authentication is only safe as long as at least one of the elements is safe. But with the things people are doing these days, if you compromise their computer, it is very easy to get to their mobile. If you compromise their mobile, it is even easier to get to their computer because the mobile tells them do something on the computer and they will just do so, and vice versa. In general, one of the things which is very often underestimated is the principle of minimal or of least privilege. If I'm not supposed to be knowing something, why do I need access to it? This is not like we are talking about military and top secret projects and whatever. This is much simpler. If I am a boss of a company, I don't really need access to all the source codes that my developers are doing unless I happen to be a developer. If I am a secretary, I don't need that either. If I'm a developer, I don't really need access to all the various kinds of contracts we have with other companies or so, or the business plans for the next year. Doing this can often help a lot. Even if you get compromised, the damage you do might not be as big as it could be otherwise. If you don't have access to the data, you cannot damage it, you cannot steal it, you cannot encrypt it, nothing bad can happen. If everybody in your company network happens to be some kind of a administrator or hopefully not, but still possible domain administrator, we have seen such networks and it is not a pretty sight, then you can do very much damage within very short amount of time. In general, preventing something tends to be cheaper than fixing it afterwards. There is certain limit, but there are many things that are cheap to do and expensive to fix if they are not done. But they're just like with the backups. Most companies and people ignore the concept of backups until they are hit with data loss. And then it is usually too late to start thinking, maybe we should implement the backups now that we have lost everything we had. Not a good approach, I would say. The common sense is another thing which is often very much ignored. People should really use what they were using in the real world. They should be using it for the digital world. Why would my friend be writing to me in a language that neither of us is using as the main one? Why would my Slovak friend be writing to me in Slovak? Why would your Hungarian friend be writing to you in Japanese? Oh, yeah. This might be a good idea for practicing Japanese after all. People don't tend to learn from their mistakes, which is surprising. We have evolved quite a lot by learning from mistakes, but it seems that in the digital world this is not happening for quite some time. They make the same mistake over and over. When you ask them what you should do, they say the right thing and they do something else. Perhaps it is the human nature. And of course, the other part is we are often using many different applications. There are the WhatsApps, Vibers, Lines, Truecallers, Facebooks, Twitters, I don't know what else is, Kontakte.com, something else. These are applications which very often slowly ask us to provide access to lots of the data we have. Your pictures, your contacts, your whatever else. And this is something that might or might not be a good thing if you don't know what is happening with the data. It is okay if you have reasonable confidence that the developer is reasonable and they tell you that what they are doing with the data is probably true. If you are seeing an application which you don't know, which you haven't seen before and have no feedback about, and it asks you to have complete control over your mobile phone, why would you install it? Well, apart from the fact that when it shows the black screen, you press the random button. That is the easiest way to install such. But generally, knowing what the applications are doing is something, or applications, the same applies to devices. What is your TV doing? For example, I was doing a bit of research on my smart TV and saw how nice it is. It tries to update every so often, so sometimes it switches itself on, contacts some server in Korea and gets the data from it. It is made by Samsung, so it's okay. It is really should be contacting server in Korea. But still, it is something that I wouldn't have expected it to do because it was never mentioned anywhere in the documentation. Knowing what is happening and what should be happening so that you can tell what is strange, what is out of ordinary, is one of the things that I think is one of the ways how to improve the level of security for general public. Thank you for your attention, and if there are any questions, feel free to jump in or try to catch me afterwards.